Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the rain-drenched jungles of Central America, where the air hangs heavy with the smell of damp earth and blooming orchids, and the sky above you flickers alive with 1,000 tiny fires. That's right, we're easing into the quiet, hypnotic world of Maya astronomy. Imagine lying flat on your back, stone floor warm beneath you, as fireflies drift lazily through the night air. The Milky Way, stretching like spilled milk across the dark, isn't just a cosmic screensaver, it's a divine crocodile floating above you. And here's your little reality check. Without your smartphone flashlight, mosquito repellent, or even a water bottle, you probably won't survive more than a few hours out here. But luckily, this is just story time, so you can keep your pillow, your blanket, and whatever midnight snack you have hidden on your nightstand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, drop a comment with your location and the local time where you're tuning in. I love seeing where you're all listening from across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie beneath a velvet Maya sky, a sky so wide and so unpolluted by city glare that you can see stars layered upon stars like glitter spilled over black velvet. To you, it looks endless, almost overwhelming. But to the Maya, it was a meticulously organized map. You might glance up and say, oh hey, Orion's belt, while the Maya might point out a turtle, a ball cord, or even the jaws of a celestial serpent ready to swallow the moon. Their entire cosmology was written up there. Every spark, every streak, every shadow. It's easy to forget, in our Netflix-lit evenings, that the night sky used to be everyone's television. And here in the humid stillness of a Maya plaza, the stars were more than decoration. They were clocks, calendars, and gods all rolled into one. Picture villagers stretched out after a day of planting maize, eyes tilted upward as priests whispered interpretations. The quiet jungle hum would be broken only by cicadas and the occasional cough from a sleepy dog, while overhead the stars carried the weight of prophecy. One mainstream fact worth keeping in mind is that the Maya tracked celestial movements with astonishing precision. So much so that modern astronomers admit their tables for Venus rival what we can do with advanced equipment. Yes, without telescopes, satellites, or fancy planetarium apps, they still charted the heavens with accuracy that boggles the mind. And yet, tucked among those brilliant achievements, there are fringe little tidbits that make you smile. For example, in some villages, people would burn copal incense to feed the stars, as if the twinkling lights might get hungry during long nights. You don't usually think of constellations needing snacks, but hey, everyone enjoys a midnight nibble. Historians still argue whether the Maya inherited parts of their star lore from earlier Olmec traditions, or whether they developed their cosmic language independently. That uncertainty only makes it more mysterious as you lie there, trying to stitch together the shapes yourself. Is that cluster really a parrot? Or is it just your overtired eyes turning astronomy into doodles? Imagine drifting off to sleep here, skin sticky from the heat, jungle frogs croaking nearby, while overhead the entire structure of Maya society, religion, farming, politics, even war, rests on how these people interpreted tiny flecks of light millions of miles away. The sky wasn't just up there, it was alive, responsive, and deeply entangled with their daily bread. One more thing. There's a small chance a jaguar might be creeping nearby, its paws soundless on the temple stones. You don't notice because you're hypnotized by stars. Don't worry, I promise this jaguar respects your personal space. But maybe, just maybe, keep your blanket pulled up just a little higher. And as your breathing slows, you feel the centuries peel back. You're no longer a modern guest in their world. You are, for these few minutes, a Maya dreamer, bathed in moonlight, and about to learn how the heavens whispered secrets to those who had the patience to listen. You roll gently onto your side, still beneath that velvet Maya night. And now the air feels thicker, as though time itself has slowed. The stars don't just sit in the sky, They march steadily, one by one, across the horizon. You notice how the moon creeps, how Venus flickers at dawn, and you begin to realize that the Maya weren't simply lying on their backs daydreaming. They were counting. They were keeping track, night after night, patient as monks with nothing but patience to spare. The Maya loved numbers almost as much as they loved maize, and that's saying something. Imagine them with their carved glyphs, carefully recording each day like tally marks, stacking up centuries as if building invisible pyramids out of numbers alone. They invented a base 20 system, which, if you're used to our base 10 math, might feel like counting with extra toes. You wiggle your fingers and toes right now, 20 digits. Suddenly it makes sense. Every day was a bead on a string, and those strings tied into calendars more complex than your smartphone's reminder function. One mainstream fact: the Maya actually ran several calendars at once. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred cycle, paired neatly with the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar. Like two gears turning in tandem, they meshed into what scholars call the calendar round, repeating every 52 years. That's longer than most of us keep a gym membership, so you can admire the persistence. The result? The Maya could predict anniversaries of rituals, planting seasons, and political anniversaries with eerie accuracy. But then there are the quirky little tidbits, the kind you don't read about in high school textbooks. Some Maya scribes would literally chant out the days like a lullaby, stringing together long poetic names. Day of Wind, Day of Jaguar, Day of Reed, Day of Flint. It almost sounds like the world's strangest shopping list. Try falling asleep to that and you just might. Historians still argue whether the 260-day cycle originally came from astronomical observations or from something a little more down to earth, like the average length of a human pregnancy. Imagine that. Entire cosmic systems may be tied to the practical business of counting baby bumps. It's a reminder that calendars aren't just about the sky. They're about the rhythms of life itself. As you let your gaze drift, you picture a priest hunched over a bark paper codex by the light of a resin torch. His fingers are stained with soot and ink, but his mind is filled with invisible numbers, combinations of days cycling endlessly. He's not bored, he's serene. To him, the turning of days is like listening to music. You never stop the song just because a measure has ended. You let it continue, note after note, until the melody returns again. You might laugh comparing your own calendar, color-coded digital blocks for meetings you'd rather skip, birthdays you half forget, dentist appointments that haunt you. The Maya had none of that, yet their calendars might make you look like an amateur. You could tease yourself. Sure, I remembered to water the plant last week, but could I predict an eclipse in 879 CE? Probably not. The night thickens, the air presses in, and you can almost hear those whispered chants echoing. Jaguar, reed, flint. It lulls you the way counting sheep might, except sheep don't usually come with feathered headdresses and obsidian knives. And before your eyelids grow too heavy, you realize that this slow rhythm, the turning of days, the patient record-keeping, wasn't just bookkeeping. It was a way to bring order to the chaos of the universe, one careful count at a time. So you keep lying there, still counting, not days but breaths. Inhale, exhale, 1, 2. The Maya would approve. After all, every great cycle begins with a single beat, and here you are, tapping quietly into the rhythm of an ancient world. The stone beneath you shifts from being a place to lie down into a stairway, sloping upward, and suddenly you're climbing slowly, step by deliberate step, toward the top of a pyramid. The jungle canopy falls away below, and the horizon opens like a giant clock face. The Maya didn't just build these monumental structures to impress their neighbors or give rulers fancy balconies. They were observatories, massive instruments of stone, tuned to the music of the sky. At the summit you pause, catching your breath. It's humid. Your shirt clings to you, and cicadas buzz like an overzealous alarm clock. But then you notice the temple itself seems to point somewhere. The stairs don't just face eastish because the architect liked sunrises. No, the pyramid is aligned so that on the day of the solstice or equinox, the sun rises or sets right along its edge. Imagine hundreds of villagers crammed into the plaza, watching a perfect solar alignment unfold. No smartphones, no hashtags, just collective awe. One mainstream fact is that temples like El Castillo at Chichen Itza are aligned with such precision that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts triangular shadows along the staircase. To the crowd below, those shadows merge into the body of a serpent, slithering down to meet the giant serpent head carved at the base. That's not an accident. That's architecture turned into celestial theater. And then there are the quirky little details. Some smaller temples were decorated with roof combs, stone lattice structures that weren't just decorative. At certain times of the year, light would pass through them, creating specific patterns inside the chamber. It's like the ancient Maya invented their own version of a cosmic light show, but without the need for Pink Floyd or overpriced tickets. Historians still argue whether every alignment was intentional or if some were just happy accidents. After all, build enough pyramids and eventually one of them will catch the equinox sun just right. But when you see the precision repeated across multiple cities, in multiple centuries, it feels less like coincidence and more like obsession. As you stand there, perched on the stone edge, you imagine the solemnity of a ritual day. Priests in feathered headdresses raise their arms. The crowd gasps, and the shadow serpent appears right on cue. For them, it wasn't an optical illusion, it was a god descending to earth. You, meanwhile, are trying not to think about how sweaty you are or how high up you've climbed. Relax. There are no handrails here, but in this story, you're perfectly safe. Think, too, about the patience required. Imagine spending decades building a pyramid, just to have it prove itself correct for one fleeting moment when the sun hit the stairs exactly right. It's the ancient version of waiting months for your sourdough starter to bubble, except way riskier if it didn't work. As the last orange rim of the sun dips below the horizon, the stars return, dotting the sky with promises of more mysteries. You sit on the top step, knees drawn up, and realize the building itself has become a bridge, not just between earth and sky, but between ordinary villagers and the vast, humming order of the cosmos. You let your hand rest on the warm limestone. It feels steady, ancient, like it has always been here, waiting for you. And as shadows deepen, you can almost hear whispers of laughter drifting up from below, because even in a world of solemn ceremonies, someone in that crowd probably muttered, "Looks like the snake's late today." Humor survives everywhere, even in stone observatories. And with that, you close your eyes for a moment, letting the steady alignment of architecture and sky fold over you like a blanket stitched from sun, shadow, and stars. The stars wheel overhead, and among them shines a particularly bright, stubborn light, Venus. You squint at it, thinking at first it's just another star. But no, the Maya knew this one. They tracked it with the kind of obsessive attention you might reserve for your favorite TV series. Venus wasn't just pretty in the sky, it was a clock, a warning, a messenger of gods and of war. The planet is dazzling, brighter than nearly everything else, rising before dawn or trailing after sunset like a silent herald. To you, it's just another pinprick. To the Maya, it was the star of the show, pun fully intended. They charted its cycle down to the day, 584 days from appearance to disappearance to reappearance. They even noted when it rose as morning star, when it slipped away into invisibility, and when it returned as evening star. That's the kind of dedication most of us can't even give to flossing. One mainstream fact, the Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya books, includes a detailed Venus table. This was essentially a planetary cheat sheet, used to plan out ritual and political events. Imagine rulers deciding whether to declare war depending on Venus' position. If you thought your horoscope had too much power over your life, try explaining to your people that Mars is in retrograde justifies raiding a neighboring city. Then there are the fringe, quirky tidbits. Some scholars suggest that Venus was tied to feathered serpent deities, and in some rituals, they'd perform offerings or occasionally dramatic spectacles when Venus first appeared as the morning star. There are even whispers that unlucky sightings might require, shall we say, a few unfortunate prisoners to become star fuel. Let's not dwell on that at bedtime, though. Think of it more like the universe demanding snacks, much like you demand popcorn when a movie starts. Historians still argue whether the Venus cycle was tied more closely to agricultural timing or purely to warfare and politics. Was it the farmer's friend or the warrior's drumbeat? The truth may be somewhere in between. You picture priests hunched over their codices, fingers tapping nervously as Venus prepares to rise, while farmers in the fields glance up at the same bright dot, wondering if it means rain is coming. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the anticipation, Thousands of eyes turned toward the horizon just before dawn, waiting for that tiny glimmer of light to break the darkness. The silence would stretch, heavy with expectation. And then, there it is, the morning star, blazing defiantly. A gasp ripples through the crowd. To them, this isn't a predictable planet. It's a god stepping into view, promising change, upheaval, or maybe just reminding everyone that the universe is far bigger than their daily worries. It's funny. You probably never glance at Venus unless some stargazing app sends you a notification. But here, in this Maya night, it matters. You find yourself oddly invested in its slow rise, as if you too need to decide whether tomorrow is for planting beans or plotting coups. Hopefully beans. Definitely beans. And as the planet climbs higher, you stretch out again, listening to the jungle chorus, letting Venus burn a sleepy afterimage into your eyes. For the Maya, it was destiny written in light. For you, it's simply another excuse to breathe deeply, smile faintly, and feel yourself sliding further into rest. The jungle night seems endless, yet you can feel time stretching out beyond your own short horizon. For the Maya, measuring a few seasons or even a few lifetimes wasn't enough. They wanted to place themselves in vast cycles, the kind that could swallow empires whole. That's where the long count calendar steps in. An enormous timescale that makes your Google Calendar look like a sticky note on the fridge. You tilt your head back, and suddenly the stars above feel heavier. They aren't just pinpricks now, they're mile markers on an infinite cosmic highway. The Maya long count tracked time from what they believed was the creation of the current world. A mythic day zero. From that starting point, every passing day was a bead on an endless abacus. Unlike the 365-day solar calendar or the 260-day sacred cycle, this one was meant for the big picture, for keeping track of dynasties, cosmic ages, and history so long that your brain might give up halfway through. One mainstream fact: the long count used a base 20 system with a quirky exception at one place value that ran on base 18 to approximate the solar year. The result was a system of backtunes, katuns, tunes, winals, and kayens, chunks of time stacking like Lego blocks. A single baktun equals roughly 394 solar years. Imagine trying to book a dentist appointment that far in advance. And here comes a wonderfully quirky tidbit. Some carved a stele, those tall stone monuments scattered across Maya cities, proudly display dates stretching thousands of years into the past, or even forward into the future. You might stumble across a stone announcing an event scheduled in the year 47 to 122, which is one way of saying, we're planning ahead. Historians sometimes chuckle at how ambitious this is, as if you left a note for someone in 3000 CE reminding them not to forget Taco Tuesday. Of course, historians still argue about the real purpose of those future-dated inscriptions. Were they predictions? Were they ritual placeholders? Kind of like penciling something into your planner and never erasing it. Or were they simply declarations of cosmic permanence? A way of saying, our city, our kings, our gods, they're tied into eternity itself. You shuffle your feet against the pyramid stone, half imagining yourself chiseling a long count date. Ninus, twum, dui, duster, sexted. It feels both absurdly precise and completely overwhelming. Most of us get annoyed having to remember a 4-digit pin, let alone entire chains of numerals marking cosmic cycles. But think of the serenity in it. 2. To the Maya, these numbers weren't cold data. They were part of a story. The heartbeat of the universe rendered in mathematical form. Each passing day wasn't just gone, it was cataloged, forever enshrined in the great ledger of time. There's something oddly comforting in that. If your day felt pointless, well, it's still there, immortalized in the cosmic count, logged alongside kings, wars, and eclipses. The jungle hums softly around you, and your eyelids grow heavy. You wonder, fleetingly, if maybe the long count was their way of giving themselves permission to dream big, to stretch past mortality. You, lying here now, are briefly part of that same stretch. Your breath synced with stars that have been counted and recounted for millennia, and as you drift a little deeper, you smile faintly at the thought, somewhere, etched in glyphs you'll never see. Today, your day already has a number. The stone pyramid fades from beneath you, and suddenly you're sitting cross-legged in a quiet Maya field. The smell of maize and damp earth heavy in the air. A farmer nearby wipes his brow with the corner of his tunic and squints upward. You realize that for all the elaborate pyramids, priests, and codices, astronomy also belonged to the soil. The stars were not just gods to be worshipped. They were guides for planting, harvesting, and survival. The maize, the sacred corn, was life itself, and knowing when to plant wasn't a matter of guesswork. The Maya turned their eyes skyward, searching for signals. One mainstream fact: they often timed the sowing of maize to the appearance of the Pleiades, that tight little cluster of stars also known as the Seven Sisters. When those faint points of light showed up in the dawn sky, it whispered, "Get those seeds in the ground." Now, the quirky part comes in. Some Maya communities told stories that the stars themselves would get annoyed if farmers ignored these signals. In other words, procrastinate on your planting, and the cosmos might take it personally. Imagine explaining to your neighbor, "Why didn't you get your field plowed?" "Oh, the stars will get grumpy with me." That's a farming excuse you don't hear every day. Historians still argue whether the Maya relied more on solar alignments or on star clusters like the Pleiades to time agriculture. The evidence is patchy, like a partly cloudy forecast. But one thing is clear, sky watching wasn't confined to observatories. It spilled out into villages, fields, and kitchens. Everyone had a stake in whether the maize grew tall. You lean back against a gourd jar and picture yourself as a farmer, waiting for the rainy season to arrive. The ground is dry and cracked, the jungle air sticky, and every night you glance upward, hoping the sky will tell you when relief is on its way. The twinkling of stars is like a weather report, minus the green screen graphics and the awkward banter. There's a kind of intimacy in it. Families might gather on rooftops, elders pointing out which constellation meant time to clear the weeds, or which sign warned of storms. The rhythm of daily life was choreographed by the heavens. You never set a calendar alert, you just stepped outside at dawn. And yet, there's a faint humor in imagining it today. Picture your smartphone app sending you a push notification. Play it is visible at dawn. Go plant corn now. You'd probably swipe it away between texts and forget. But for the Maya, those faint stars were more trustworthy than any reminder appy. As the field around you hums with insects, you realize the stars weren't just telling the priests about cosmic order. They were whispering directly to farmers about when to dig, sow, and harvest. The heavens weren't lofty and distant. They were practical neighbors, quietly keeping watch over the crops. You lie back fully in the maize field, leaves brushing against your cheeks, and watch the sky pulse with its secret messages. 1,000 years ago, someone else lay here doing the exact same thing, hoping for the same rains, eyes fixed on the same cluster of stars. Suddenly, the distance between you and them feels very small, as if the fields and the constellations have folded time into one endless growing season. The maize field fades, and now you're drifting toward the flickering light of torches. Deep within a Maya city, you hear the low murmur of voices, sandals scuffing across limestone floors, and the rustle of bark paper books being unrolled carefully by steady hands. Here, astronomy isn't the domain of farmers alone, it is the guarded craft of priests and scribes, the keepers of cosmic secrets. You find yourself peeking around the carved lintel of a temple chamber. Inside, a scribe sits cross-legged, his lap covered with folded bark paper, smoothed and painted with a white surface. His brush is tipped with soot and plant dye, and he dips it carefully, writing in glyphs so tiny and elegant they almost look like patterns in butterfly wings. Each glyph marks not just a number or a star, but a prayer, a calculation, a warning. He's not doodling for fun. He's mapping the heavens with all the seriousness of someone handling dynamite. One mainstream fact: Maya priests maintained elaborate almanacs that combined astronomy with ritual. These were not just dry timetables. They told which days were favorable for planting, which for making offerings, which for holding royal ceremonies. Imagine flipping open a planner that says, Tuesday, favorable for weaving cloth. Wednesday, better not start a war. Practical, if oddly specific. Then there's the quirky tidbit. The priests didn't always work alone. Some had apprentices, usually younger boys, who would climb temple steps night after night to make observations, sketching tiny dots onto clay tablets. Picture a kid yawning, rubbing his eyes, being told to write down the position of Venus for the 20th night in a row. You can almost hear him mutter, "Can't I just play ball instead?" But no, the stars waited for no one. Historians still argue whether these scribes were scientists in the modern sense or more like ritual specialists, weaving numbers and omens together. Were they proto-astronomers or diviners in feathered cloaks? The truth, most likely, is somewhere in the middle. To the Maya, there was no hard line between science and spirituality. Charting an eclipse and preparing incense for a rain ceremony were two sides of the same sacred task. You notice the room around you. The walls are painted with faded reds and blues. Scenes of gods, serpents, and celestial monsters. In one corner, a shell trumpet leans against a basket, ready to call out the hours of ritual. The air smells faintly of copal resin, its smoke curling lazily toward the ceiling. Everything here whispers of patience, of long nights spent listening to the sky as if it were a teacher. You can't help but compare it to modern life. Imagine your local weather forecaster chanting prayers while adjusting radar maps, or an astronomer at NASA lighting incense before launching a telescope. It would feel unusual now, but to the Maya, blending ritual with observation was perfectly logical. Why wouldn't you hedge your bets with both math and myth? As you sit quietly, the scribe pauses, looks up at the stars through a narrow temple window, and nods as though the heavens just confirmed his calculations. His apprentice scribbles furiously, trying to keep up. You're just an observer here, but somehow the calm diligence seeps into you. Every flick of his brush feels like a heartbeat, every notation like a breath, and so you sink deeper into the trance of it, realizing that behind the grandeur of pyramids and public ceremonies lay the steady, unglamorous labor of night after night of star watching. The priests and sky watchers may not have been the loudest figures in Maya society, but they were its quiet pulse, marking the days, whispering advice, and ensuring that the world remained in rhythm with the heavens. The temple chamber fades, and suddenly you're outside again, standing shoulder to shoulder with a crowd in a Maya plaza. The sky above is familiar, stars sprinkled generously across the dark. But tonight something is wrong. The moon, round and silver only moments ago, has a bite taken out of it. Slowly, steadily, shadow swallows it whole, and the plaza hums with tension. You feel a shiver ripple through the crowd. This is no ordinary night. This is an eclipse. Your breath slows as the darkness thickens. For you, an eclipse might just mean a cool photo on your phone or a hurried glance through cardboard glasses. For the Maya, it was a cosmic drama, a celestial crisis. The gods were clearly up to something, and humans were left to interpret the signs. One mainstream fact: the Maya predicted eclipses with remarkable accuracy, using their calendar systems. Priests could warn when the sun or moon would vanish. But to the common villager, standing in the plaza and seeing daylight snuffed out, it wasn't astronomy, it was terrifying magic. And then there's the quirky tidbit. Some Maya myths described celestial monsters, giant serpents or jaguars, devouring the sun or moon during an eclipse. Villagers might shout, "Drum," or clap to scare the beast away, basically offering celestial customer service. "Excuse me, please return the moon. It's under warranty." Imagine the relief when the moon reemerged, proof that the noise and ritual worked, even if it was just orbital mechanics all along. Historians still argue whether eclipse predictions were shared widely among the people or guarded closely by priests as secret knowledge. Was it better to let the crowd panic so that the ritual seemed more powerful, or to reassure them with calm foresight? The answer probably varied from city to city. The plaza grows tense as the moon fades into a reddish glow. Children clutch their mothers. Priests raise torches, and you can almost feel the pounding of drums in your chest. To you, it's mesmerizing. To them, it's the universe threatening to unravel. And yet, in the midst of fear, there's community. Neighbors huddle close, whispering, waiting together for the sky to heal. Think about it. You've probably had nights where the power went out, and suddenly everyone gathered outside, sharing candles, laughing nervously. That's the feeling here, multiplied by cosmic stakes. The eclipse is terrifying, but also oddly unifying. For a moment, all eyes are on the same phenomenon, every breath synced with the fade of the moon. And then, slowly, the shadow recedes, the moon peeks out, shy but steady, like a guest returning to the party after disappearing without explanation. The plaza exhales, tension melting into relief. Priests declare victory, the serpent chased away, and villagers drift back to their homes, comforted that order has returned. You stay behind a moment longer, watching the moon shine brightly again. The night feels quieter now. Calmer, as if the heavens just finished telling a scary bedtime story but made sure to tuck you in at the end. The moon steadies above you, but your eyes wander across the rest of the night sky. Stars scatter in patterns you've known since childhood. Orion, the Big Dipper. But the Maya had their own constellations, stitched together not as Greco-Roman heroes but as jaguars, turtles, and serpents. To them, the sky was a mirror of the jungle. Every familiar creature had a double glowing up there, keeping watch. You lie back in the plaza's grass and trace a cluster of stars shaped like the back of a great turtle. In Maya lore, that turtle wasn't just a cute cosmic reptile, it was a stand-in for the Earth itself, carrying creation stories on its shell. Farmers might look up and say, the turtle is rising, time for planting. Practical? Yes, but also profoundly poetic. One mainstream fact: the dark rift in the Milky Way, that hazy stripe of stars you can see if the night is clear, was imagined by the Maya as the body of a cosmic serpent, or sometimes as the jaws of a great crocodile. You glance up now and almost believe it. It does look like something slithering, mouth open, waiting. Now, the quirky tidbit. Some Maya storytellers claimed that certain star clusters represented a celestial ball court, where gods played their mythic ball game. Imagine looking up at the Orion Nebula and thinking, yep, that's where the Divine Basketball League happens. Suddenly, March Madness feels a little less impressive. Historians still argue whether ordinary villagers widely knew these constellations, or whether they were more the domain of ritual specialists. Did grandmothers point them out casually to children on rooftops? Or were they tightly guarded temple knowledge? Either way, lying under the sky meant lying under layers of stories, creatures, and meanings. You tilt your head and see the faint band of the Milky Way stretching across the heavens. To the Maya, it was sometimes seen as a celestial river, sometimes as a road linking the worlds of gods and humans. Tonight it looks soft and endless, like someone spilled flour across black velvet. You imagine travelers using it as a guide, or storytellers weaving entire myths around its slow drift. A dog barks in the distance, pulling your gaze toward another constellation. Some scholars believe the Maya associated with a mythical dog who carried messages between worlds. You chuckle quietly. Even in the heavens, dogs are still running errands. What you notice most, though, is the way these constellations blur the line between sky and earth. Jaguars above, jaguars below, turtles swimming through the Milky Way as well as rivers. The Maya weren't escaping their world when they looked up. They were extending it. The jungle, the fields, the rituals, they were all mirrored in starlight. You yawn, your body heavy, the grass cool beneath your shoulders. The constellations twinkle patiently, waiting for you to find their shapes. Somewhere above, the serpent slithers, the turtle floats, and the ball game plays on. The sky becomes not a distant puzzle but a familiar storybook, one that you can read simply by looking up. The constellations fade, and now you drift toward the horizon, where Venus blazes like a lantern against the dark. It is so bright, so sharp, that you almost mistake it for a low-hanging torch. For the Maya, Venus wasn't just another star, it was the star, the one whose movements could shake kingdoms. You squint, and it seems closer, as though you could almost touch it. Priests certainly tried, at least with their math. They tracked Venus with obsessive care, recording its rising and setting with astonishing accuracy. One mainstream fact: the Maya calculated Venus's synodic cycle, 584 days, with such precision that modern astronomers still shake their heads in admiration. They weren't using telescopes or calculators, just sharp eyes, patience, and an unyielding sense of cosmic importance. But the quirky tidbit is how they interpreted it. To them, Venus was linked with war and danger. If Venus rose at dawn, it was said to bring ill omens, signaling battles, sacrifices, or dramatic events. Imagine being a Maya king and thinking, well, Venus is up. Guess I have to start a war now. It's like blaming your horoscope for launching an invasion. Historians still argue whether rulers truly based their decisions on Venus's cycle, or whether the association was more symbolic. Did armies march just because a planet popped up on the horizon? Or did kings use Venus as convenient justification for plans they already had? Either way, Venus was never ignored. You picture a scribe in his chamber, hunched over folded bark paper, ticking off each morning's appearance of the planet. Maybe he groaned when clouds blocked his view, worried that his record would be incomplete. And when Venus finally returned after disappearing for weeks, he probably felt both relief and dread. Relief, because the cycle continued. Dread, because, well, now the omens start again. You can feel the awe this little dot in the sky inspired. To the average villager, Venus wasn't just pretty, it was destiny shining back at them. Its glow touched crops, marriages, politics, and even bedtime stories. Somewhere, a child might be told, don't stare at Venus too long, or you'll dream of jaguars. And maybe they did. The plaza grows quieter around you, and Venus keeps burning bright. It feels steady, inevitable, like a tiny eye watching over all of this. You realize the Maya weren't wrong in thinking it mattered. Even today, you can't look away. The planet feels important. Perhaps not for war anymore, but as a reminder of how deeply humans have always tried to connect themselves with the rhythms of the sky. Venus lingers on the horizon as you follow a priest inside a chamber where the air smells faintly of ink and smoke. It's quieter here, away from the plaza drums. You notice the flickering light of oil lamps illuminating bundles of folded bark paper books stacked carefully on a wooden shelf. These are codices, the prized record keepers of Maya knowledge. You watch as a scribe bends over one such codex, his brush cut from animal hair, his palette a smooth seashell holding rich pigments, red from crushed insects, black from soot, blue from a secret mixture of clay and plants. He paints delicate glyphs onto the paper, each square a story, each stroke deliberate and slow. One mainstream fact: the Maya produced several codices, each containing detailed astronomical charts, including eclipse tables, Venus cycles, and sacred calendars. Only a handful survive today, rescued from fire and time. The quirky tidbit: The scribe's desk might include a jaguar pelt, not just as decoration but as a practical cushion for resting hands. Imagine drafting meticulous sky charts on top of a spotted cat's skin, thinking, yep, that's ergonomics, 800 CE style. It's both stylish and oddly practical, soft enough to support hours of painting. Historians still argue whether most codices were meant for teaching, rituel, or direct royal use. Were they the priestly equivalent of reference manuals, consulted daily, or were they prestige objects, displayed during ceremonies to demonstrate a king's connection to the cosmos? Their fragility makes the debate harder. Most were destroyed by humidity, or later, by conquistadors with a preference for bonfires. You lean closer and notice one page filled with repeating dots and bars. It looks like a spreadsheet before spreadsheets existed. To the Maya, dots and bars made up their numerical system, a beautifully simple way to count. Here, those counts mark the cycles of Venus and eclipses. Notes written not for idle curiosity but for survival, politics, and ritual. The room feels reverent, even a little tense. You sense how much weight these books carried. To lose them would be like forgetting the rhythm of the seasons, or erasing the very language of the sky. The scribe pauses, stretches his stiff fingers, then resumes painting, as if knowing his work has to outlast his lifetime. Outside, the jungle hums, but in here it is the quiet rustle of paper and the scratch of brushstrokes. You feel almost guilty watching, as though you're peeking into a secret world where ink binds heaven to earth. The codex folds neatly like an accordion, each page hiding another layer of cosmic order. And you think, strange, isn't it? Our modern world has shelves of textbooks, PDFs, and cloud drives. The Maya had jaguar pelts, shells of pigment, and folded paper. Both methods hold the same intent, to keep the sky from slipping away, to capture the ungraspable. The priest closes one codex gently, pressing it shut with a stone weight. The lamps flicker, the room glows warm, and you let your eyes drift half-closed. Knowledge sleeps here, folded and waiting. The codex room fades, and now you find yourself standing in a wide courtyard beneath towering pyramid steps. The air is thick with incense, and hundreds of villagers wait in silence. At the top of the temple, a king appears in feathered headdress, jade glittering at his throat. The crowd murmurs, then quiets again. Tonight, he will prove that he is more than just a man. He is the one who commands the heavens. The king lifts his arms as a priest signals the moment. You glance skyward. Venus rises. Just as predicted, gasps ripple through the plaza, as though the monarch himself has called the planet into being. One mainstream fact: Maya rulers staged ceremonies timed to astronomical events, aligning their power with the order of the cosmos. It wasn't coincidence, it was careful planning based on centuries of observation. The quirky tidbit: some rulers would even bleed themselves with stingray spines or obsidian blades, letting drops fall on bark paper, which was then burned. The smoke was said to summon visions of ancestors and gods. You can imagine the poor attendants whispering, Majesty, please don't faint on the pyramid steps again. But of course, the spectacle only strengthened the illusion of divine connection. Historians still argue whether the common people genuinely believed rulers controlled the sky, or whether they were simply caught up in the grandeur of it all. Was it true faith, or careful theater? Either way, the effect was mesmerizing. The sky's predictability became a stage, and the king was its star performer. You watch as torches flare, drums thrum, and the king points toward Venus, his jade ornaments flashing in the firelight. He speaks of ancestors, gods, and the balance of time. For the villagers, this is not abstract. The rising of Venus means crops, rains, and stability. So if the king can bring Venus, surely he can keep the world turning. The ceremony ends with chants and offerings. People file away, whispering about omens and blessings. The king disappears into the temple, perhaps exhausted, perhaps triumphant. You remain in the courtyard, thinking about how knowledge of the heavens can turn into earthly power. Even today, leaders still lean on symbols, flags, speeches, or data projections on a giant screen. The Maya did it with planets and shadows. The plaza empties, leaving only the lingering smell of copal incense. The pyramids loom silent again, but you can almost hear the echoes of the drums, fading into the night. The courtyard dissolves into mist, and now you're back under the jungle sky, lying on your back with cool grass beneath you. Stars sprinkle the heavens in dizzying numbers, and you wonder just how much of it the Maya truly grasped. Their knowledge feels both immense and mysterious. You can count their accuracy in Venus cycles. You've seen their calendars. But still, you sense missing pieces. One mainstream fact: the Maya had no telescopes, yet their astronomical tables rivaled those of later European observatories. Their eclipse predictions, for example, were sometimes precise to the day. achieved with nothing more than naked eyes and endless patience. It's almost unbelievable that such detail could emerge from a world without glass lenses. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some scholars think they may have used pools of still water as mirrors, staring into reflections of the night sky instead of craning their necks. Imagine a priest crouched over a puddle, mumbling, "Ah yes, the Milky Way looks clearer upside down." Whether or not it's true, it's a wonderfully peaceful image. Astronomy doubled as stargazing in a jungle pond. Historians still argue whether the Maya genuinely understood the heliocentric model, that planets revolve around the sun, or whether their math just happened to align with such accuracy. Did they guess the deeper structure of the cosmos, or did their worldview stay rooted in cycles and omens? Some argue they approached scientific reasoning. Others say their astronomy was inseparable from myth and ritual. Both possibilities leave you marveling. You stretch out, imagining the unbroken chain of skywatchers across centuries. Each generation added new details, corrected old mistakes, and passed down a story of the heavens that became richer over time. Yet so much remains a mystery to us. Their books burned, their cities emptied, their voices lost. What fragments remain are like constellations themselves, gaps filled in by imagination. The night thickens, the jungle hums steadily, 1,000 crickets marking the rhythm like cosmic metronomes. Above you, the stars glitter, half questions, half answers. You feel sleepier now, as though the debates themselves are a lullaby. The uncertainties, the unknowns, they don't frustrate you. They soothe you. Because mystery has its own kind of peace. The stars blur slightly as you sit up again, stretching your back and brushing off the cool grass. You realize you've been wandering through centuries of Maya thought. Yet their story doesn't end with temples and codices. Instead, it lingers like Venus still hanging stubbornly in the morning sky. One mainstream fact: Maya astronomical knowledge didn't vanish entirely after the Spanish conquest. Though countless codices were destroyed, fragments survived in oral traditions, in community practices, and even in colonial writings like the Chilambalam books. Maya day keepers, keepers of the calendar, continued to track the sacred count of days, often blending Catholic rituals with older cycles. The rhythm endured, quietly woven into daily life. The quirky tidbit: some present-day Maya farmers still plant crops in tune with lunar phases, believing corn grows taller if planted beneath certain moons. It might sound quaint, but gardeners worldwide still argue about moon-timed planting. Maybe, just maybe, your tomatoes would also thank you for a waxing crescent. Historians still argue whether modern Maya practices are direct continuations of ancient traditions, or creative revivals inspired by fragments of the past. Is a ritual today a survival from 500 years ago, or a new invention honoring that memory? Either way, it shows that the cosmos never truly slipped away from the people who lived under it. You picture a modern village in the Yucatan. The sun sets, a few electric bulbs flicker on, but someone still looks up at the stars, whispering a prayer or simply counting the days. In Guatemala, a daykeeper scratches numbers into a notebook. In Chiapas, a farmer eyes the moon before sowing beans. These quiet acts feel like ripples from the ancient plazas you've walked tonight. The temples may be overgrown, their rulers long forgotten, but the sky remains. The same constellations, the same Venus cycle, the same slow turning of time. You realize that knowledge doesn't really vanish. It changes shape, hides in rituals, or whispers in stories. A soft breeze stirs the trees around you, as though the jungle itself approves of the thought. You exhale, slow and steady. The ancient and the modern blur, until they feel like the same long dream. The night has carried you far, and now you find yourself back at the edge of a clearing. The Great Pyramid looms in the distance, its silhouette softened by moonlight, while the air hums with the quiet insistence of crickets and far-off owls. You feel the heaviness of the journey in your eyelids, yet there's one last thing left to notice: how everything you've seen circles back, like the endless calendars themselves. One mainstream fact: the Maya viewed time not as a straight line but as cycles upon cycles. Days turned to months, months to years, and years to vast backtunes. Immense spans that gave shape to history. This cyclical view meant that every ritual, every Venus rising, every eclipse had a place within a repeating rhythm. To them, endings were beginnings, always returning. The quirky tidbit: some carved monuments even mark dates billions of years in the past. As if the scribes decided, sure, let's just write down the birthday of the universe while we're at it. It's hard not to chuckle at the ambition of a priest calmly noting events from before the earth itself cooled. Maybe it was exaggeration, or maybe it was a way of reminding people that the present was just one bead on a very, very long necklace. Historians still argue whether the Maya obsession with cycles was primarily practical, predicting crops and seasons, or more spiritual, meant to give comfort by weaving life into eternity. Either way, standing in that clearing, you can sense the reassurance it must have offered. If everything returns, then nothing is ever truly lost. You sit down one last time, staring at Venus as it begins to fade into the dawn light. The temples, the scribes, the kings, the rituals, they all seem to settle into silence, leaving only you and the sky. The jungle breathes, the stars fade, and you realize that the quiet secrets of Maya astronomy weren't just about planets and calendars, but about finding rhythm, comfort, and continuity in the endless sweep of time. The clearing drifts away, and you let yourself drift with it. And now, as the journey closes, you can allow your thoughts to slow, to soften, to loosen their edges. The pyramids fade behind you, not gone, but folded gently into the dark, like the closing of a codex page. You are left only with the quiet rhythm of breath and the soft thrum of night. The stars that once blazed so sharply now blur into a pale glow, like lanterns dimmed at the end of a long festival. The patterns are still there, though you don't need to trace them anymore. They will continue their cycles whether you notice or not, and that is a comfort, that the sky keeps its watch so you don't have to. The sounds of the jungle settle into something almost like a lullaby, steady, layered, unhurried. Each cricket call stretches a little longer, each breeze whispers a little lower. The world seems to exhale, and you exhale with it. There is nothing left to remember, nothing left to hold on to. The mysteries can remain mysteries. The unanswered questions can wait until another time. For now, you can let the weight of the night carry you, just as the Maya once let the weight of the heavens guide their seasons and their stories. Time folds in on itself, as it always has. One day ends, another begins, one breath flows into the next. The wheel of cycles turns, steady and patient, and in that turning, you find the stillness you've been searching for. So rest now. Let the lights dim completely. Let your body sink, heavy and calm. The sky will keep turning overhead, faithfully, as it always has. You can close your eyes and let the quiet take you.